My phone buzzed with a text that made my stomach drop instantly. Mom was demanding double rent starting next month. 6 years of paying on time, maintaining their property, being the responsible daughter they could count on, and this was my reward. I stared at the message again, trying to process that my freeloading brother Travis, his entitled wife Ashley, and their 2 wild children would be moving into my apartment tomorrow. The apartment I had made a home. The one I had respected and cared for. Throughout our lives, my parents always gave Travis endless chances while expecting perfection from me, but demanding I pay twice as much while letting him live rent-free. This time they had pushed me too far. I was done being the family doormat. Teaching art to elementary school children had been my passion for the past 8 years. At 32, I had established myself at Westfield Elementary with a reputation for bringing creativity and joy to my students. My modest 2-bedroom apartment had been my sanctuary since I started renting it from my parents 6 years ago. It wasn't fancy, just 900 square feet with a small balcony where I grew herbs and tomatoes in the summer. But I had transformed it into a cozy space that reflected my personality, with walls adorned with both my artwork and pieces from local artists I admired. My payment record had been impeccable. Rent delivered on the first of each month without fail. Beyond that, I had invested in improvements, repainting the walls in warm neutrals, installing better light fixtures, and even replacing the bathroom vanity when it started showing signs of water damage. All with my own money, simply because I respected the space and wanted it to feel like home. The property had been my parents' first real estate investment, purchased 12 years ago when the market dipped. My father, a retired accountant, had always been savvy with money, and my mother, who ran a small bookkeeping business, had supported his venture into property ownership. They owned 3 rental properties now, but this was the first, and according to them, their favorite because family was taking care of it. Then there was Travis. My younger brother by 2 years had never quite figured out adulthood. While I had worked through college and secured a teaching position immediately after graduation, Travis had bounced between 6 different jobs in the past decade. His resume read like a tour of the service industry. Barista, waiter, delivery driver, retail associate, never lasting more than 18 months at any position. The pattern was consistent initial enthusiasm, followed by complaints about management, then reduced hours due to conflicts, and finally quitting before he could be fired. He had met Ashley at a bar where he briefly worked as a bouncer. She had been a cocktail waitress with aspirations of becoming an interior designer, though she had never pursued education in that field. They married quickly, and within a year their daughter Lucy was born, followed by son Liam 2 years later. Now 6 and 4, the children were sweet but undisciplined, a reflection of their parents' inconsistent approach to boundaries. Throughout Travis's adult life, my parents had been his safety net. When he couldn't make rent, they covered it. When his car needed repairs, they paid the mechanic. When he and Ashley wanted a proper wedding, my parents funded a celebration that was frankly beyond their means. Meanwhile, I had been expected to stand on my own 2 feet from day one. "You're the responsible one, Jeanette," my mother would say, as if my reliability was reason enough to expect less support. Last Tuesday evening, my mother called as I was grading student projects. "Jeanette, we need to discuss something important," she began, her tone already putting me on alert. "Is everything okay? Are you and Dad all right?" I asked, immediately concerned about their health. "We're fine, but Travis is in trouble again. The restaurant where he was working has closed down and they're facing eviction. They need somewhere to stay, and we've been thinking." I knew where this was headed before she finished her sentence. The knot in my stomach tightened. "Your apartment has that 2nd bedroom you're using as an office. It would just be temporary until Travis finds another job and gets back on his feet." "Mom, that's my workspace. I need it for preparing lessons and grading. Plus there are 4 of them, and 1 of me in a 2-bedroom apartment. That's not realistic." "Family helps family, Jeanette. Would you rather see your brother and his children homeless? It's just for a month, maybe 2 at most. Travis already has some promising leads." Travis always had promising leads that somehow never materialized. "And where exactly would I sleep? Give up my bedroom and take the office?" I asked, already calculating how to make this work despite my misgivings. "Well," my mother paused, "we were thinking that since you're just one person and they're a family with children, they should probably have the master bedroom." The audacity of her suggestion left me momentarily speechless. "You want me to give up my bedroom in my own apartment? The apartment I've been paying rent on for 6 years. "It's actually our apartment, dear, and it would just be temporary. The children need space to play, and Travis and Ashley need privacy. I closed my eyes, counting silently to 10 before responding. And what about my privacy, my space, my routine? You've always been so adaptable, Jeanette. This is what family does. We make sacrifices for each other. The implication being that I wasn't making enough sacrifices already. Against my better judgment, I reluctantly agreed to a temporary arrangement. 1 month, I told myself. I could survive anything for 1 month. Thank you, sweetheart, my mother said with audible relief. They'll be moving in this weekend. I knew we could count on you. As I hung up, I had no idea just how much they would be counting on me, or how quickly temporary would become something else entirely. Saturday morning arrived with the screech of tires in my parking lot. I looked out the window to see Travis's battered SUV piled high with belongings, followed by our parents' sedans similarly loaded. This didn't look like a temporary stay's worth of possessions. I had spent the previous evening moving my home office equipment into my bedroom, creating a cramped but functional workspace in the corner. My art supplies were carefully organized in plastic containers stacked along one wall. It wasn't ideal, but it would work for a few weeks. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Travis, his characteristic easy smile in place. At 30, he still possessed the boyish charm that had gotten him out of trouble his entire life. Behind him stood Ashley, holding Liam on her hip, with Lucy peering around her mother's legs. Hey sis, Travis engulfed me in a bear hug that felt genuine. That was the thing about Travis. He wasn't malicious, just perpetually irresponsible. Thanks for saving our butts. I swear we'll be out of your hair before you know it. Ashley offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. The master bathroom has good lighting, right? I need proper lighting for my makeup routine. No, thank you. No acknowledgement that they were disrupting my life. Just an immediate question about how the space would serve her needs. It's adequate, I replied, stepping back to let them in. I've put fresh sheets on the bed and cleared some closet space for you. Some space, Ashley frowned. We have 4 people's clothes, Jeanette. I bit back a retort about gratitude. I still live here too, Ashley. I need to keep my clothes somewhere. My parents appeared in the doorway, then arms loaded with boxes. My father, Alan, gave me a one-armed hug, while my mother, Diane, simply nodded in my direction before bustling past. Where should we put the kids' toys? She asked already, heading toward my former office. There's limited space in the second bedroom, I began, but she waved dismissively. They'll need the living room too, Jeanette. Children need space to play. And apparently I needed no space at all. Over the next 4 hours, I watched as my carefully curated apartment transformed into something unrecognizable. Travis and Ashley's possessions spilled from the master bedroom into the shared spaces. Toys appeared in every corner. The refrigerator was commandeered for dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and juice boxes. My organized kitchen cabinets were rearranged to accommodate Ashley's collection of smoothie makers and specialty coffee equipment, items that seemed unnecessary for people facing financial hardship. When I returned from a grocery run, I found my parents preparing to leave. You've got everything settled then, I asked, hoping for some acknowledgement of the upheaval. Just about, my father replied. Travis is still looking for work, but he's got several promising prospects. This is just a stepping stone. How long do you actually expect them to stay? I asked directly. My parents exchanged glances. Well, my mother began carefully until they get back on their feet. Travis needs family support right now. And a timeline for that would be... These things can't be rushed, Jeanette, my father interjected. Finding the right job takes time. We don't want Travis jumping into something unsuitable just to make a quick escape. So indefinitely then, I translated. We're family, my mother said firmly, as if that explained and excused everything. We support each other through difficult times. I'm surprised at your attitude. My attitude, I felt heat rising in my cheeks. I've given up my space, my privacy, and my routine to help Travis. Again. I think I'm being pretty supportive. He has children to consider, my mother replied, her tone, suggesting I couldn't possibly understand the pressures of parenthood. Your situation is simpler. The implication that my life was less valuable or complex because I wasn't married with children stung. Before I could respond, Ashley called from the kitchen. Diane, should I put my special occasion plates in this cabinet or the other one? My mother hurried off to consult on the reorganization of my kitchen, effectively ending our conversation. That first evening set the pattern for what would follow. The children's bedtime routine was chaotic and loud, extending well past 10 o'clock. Ashley complained that the water pressure in the shower wasn't strong enough. Travis commandeered the living room television for a basketball game, assuring me I wouldn't mind since I probably had papers to grade anyway. By Monday morning, I was exhausted and increasingly resentful. I left early for work, grateful for the respite my classroom would provide. That afternoon, I returned to find my carefully organized art supplies had been moved from their neat stack in my bedroom to a jumbled pile in the hall closet. "We needed the space for our winter clothes," Ashley explained when confronted. "You weren't using them anyway, right?" "That's not the point," I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "Those are expensive materials for my work. Some are fragile. You should have asked before moving them." "It's not a big deal," she shrugged. "They're just craft supplies." The dismissal of my professional materials as craft supplies was just another small indignity in what was becoming a mounting pile. When Travis asked to borrow my car the following day because his was acting funny, I reluctantly agreed. He returned it 8 hours later with an empty gas tank and a new scratch on the passenger door that he claimed was probably already there. By the end of the first week, I knew I needed to establish some boundaries. I texted my parents asking for a family meeting that weekend. They arrived Sunday afternoon, and we gathered in the living room that was now dominated by children's toys despite my attempts to contain them to the second bedroom. "I need to discuss some house rules," I began carefully. "I understand this is a difficult time, but I still live here too, and certain things need to be respected." Of course, my father nodded encouragingly. I outlined reasonable requests: quiet hours after 9 p.m., asking before borrowing my belongings, maintaining cleanliness in shared spaces, and respecting my workspace in my bedroom. "That all seems rather rigid," my mother frowned. "Travis and Ashley are trying to maintain normality for the children in a difficult situation. A little flexibility would be compassionate." "I've been flexible," I countered. "But this isn't working as it stands. I need some boundaries." "I think Jeanette's being selfish," Ashley said suddenly. "We're family, we're struggling, and she's counting bottles of dish soap and complaining about toys." "That's not what I said," I protested, but Travis jumped in. "Look, sis, we appreciate the roof over our heads, but you're making us feel unwelcome. The kids can sense the tension." "You are welcome," I clarified, frustration mounting. "I just need some basic courtesy and respect for my space and belongings." "Perhaps you don't understand the stress of parenthood," my mother suggested, patting Ashley's hand sympathetically. "Children require flexibility and understanding." The conversation deteriorated from there, with my reasonable requests reframed as selfishness and rigidity. By the time my parents left, nothing had been resolved, and I felt even more marginalized in my own home. The next morning, I left for work earlier than necessary, stopping at a cafe to gather my thoughts. While scrolling through social media to distract myself, I noticed a post from Travis time-stamped mid-afternoon the previous day, crushing level 50, personal best, with a screenshot from a video game. I frowned, recalling his claim to my parents that he'd spent yesterday pounding the pavement looking for work. Out of curiosity, I checked his activity over the past week. There were multiple posts during business hours. Game achievements, television show, commentary, even check-ins at a local sports bar. The realization hit hard. While I was working and accommodating his family in my home, Travis wasn't actually looking for work. He was enjoying his unemployment enabled by our parents, and now by me. That betrayal marked a turning point. I had been inconvenienced but willing to help during a genuine crisis. Now I realized I was being taken advantage of by someone who wasn't even trying to improve his situation. The weight of this truth settled heavily on my shoulders as I drove to work, my thoughts churning with questions about how long this charade could possibly continue. 4 weeks after Travis and his family moved in, I stood in the doorway of what had once been my home office, staring in disbelief. The room had been completely transformed. My desk had been pushed against the wall to make room for a colorful playmat. Toy bins lined the opposite wall. The bookshelves that once held my teaching resources and art books now displayed children's toys and games. "Do you like it?" Ashley asked, appearing beside me with a proud smile. "I figured, since we're going to be here a while, we should make it more functional. The kids needed a dedicated play space. You did this without asking me." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "This is my apartment, Ashley. You can't just rearrange rooms without consulting me." Her smile faltered. "I thought you'd be pleased. It looks much better now, more lived in. Those boring books and files were just collecting dust anyway." Those boring books are essential for my job, I snapped. And my files contain important documents. Where did you put everything? In those boxes, she gestured vaguely toward the corner where several cardboard boxes were stacked haphazardly. It's not like you were using the room anyway. We gave you the closet for your art stuff. I crossed to the boxes and opened the top one. My carefully organized lesson plans and reference materials were jumbled together without any semblance of their original order. Beneath them, I spotted one of my favorite art books, its cover bent from careless handling. I need my things kept in order, Ashley. I spent years collecting these materials and organizing them for easy access. Now I'll have to spend hours sorting through this mess. You're overreacting, she rolled her eyes. It's just stuff. The children need a safe space to play away from your precious belongings. Where are my watercolors? I asked, suddenly remembering the expensive set I'd treated myself to last Christmas. The paints, I put them up high so the kids couldn't reach them. I followed her gesture to the top of the bookshelf, where my professional-grade watercolor set sat open, several of the pans clearly used and not properly cleaned. Did you use my watercolors? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Lucy wanted to paint yesterday. I couldn't find her kitty paints, so I let her use a few of yours. What's the big deal? Paint is paint. I picked up the set, examining the damage. Several colors were mixed together, the fine brushes frayed from improper use. This wasn't a children's craft supply. It was a $300 professional set that I'd saved for months to purchase. These cost more than your entire makeup collection, Ashley. They're professional supplies, not toys for a 6-year-old. Well, how was I supposed to know that? They look like regular paints to me. She shrugged dismissively. Anyway, Lucy enjoyed them. You should be happy your stuff is getting used instead of just sitting around. I closed the watercolor set, too angry to continue the conversation productively. From now on, ask before you touch anything of mine, and don't rearrange my apartment without discussing it first. Fine, Ashley huffed. I was just trying to make this place more livable. Sorry for trying to help. That evening, I returned from a grocery run to find Travis sprawled on my sofa, beer in hand, watching sports highlights. Hey, sis, he greeted without looking away from the screen. Did you get more of those chips I like? I set the grocery bags on the counter with more force than necessary. No, Travis. I didn't buy your favorite chips. I bought basic necessities with my money for a household that seems to be consuming everything in sight. That got his attention. Whoa, what's with the attitude? Bad day at school. Bad month at home, I corrected. It's been 4 weeks, Travis. You promised this would be temporary. Have you even applied for any jobs? Of course I have, he replied, looking offended. I've put out dozens of applications. The job market's tough right now. Really? Because your social media tells a different story. Lots of gaming and sports bar visits during business hours for someone supposedly pounding the pavement. His expression shifted from offense to guilt. You're spying on me now. It's hardly spying when you post everything publicly, I pointed out. Look, I agreed to help during an emergency, but this is becoming a permanent arrangement and I never signed up for that. What do you want me to do, Jeanette? Take the first minimum wage job that comes along. I have a family to support. I need something that pays decent money. You need something, period. You can build from there. That's what adults do. They take responsibility and do what needs to be done. Easy for you to say with your stable teaching job, he muttered. A job I worked hard for, I reminded him. A job I went to college for, that I show up to every day even when I don't feel like it. Before Travis could respond, my phone rang. It was my mother. Jeanette, Ashley just called me in tears, she began, without preamble. What's this about you forbidding the children from playing in the apartment? That's not what happened, I said, pinching the bridge of my nose. Ashley completely rearranged my office without permission and let Lucy use my expensive professional watercolors. I simply asked her to respect my belongings and consult me before making changes to my home. It sounds like you're being very territorial about a few paintbrushes, my mother replied. These are children, Jeanette. They need understanding and patience. Mom, those paintbrushes cost hundreds of dollars. They're professional tools, not toys. Would you let a child play with Dad's power tools? That's entirely different, she dismissed. Tools are dangerous. Paint is just paint. The point is respect for my possessions and my space, I insisted. I've been more than accommodating, but there have to be some boundaries. I thought we raised you to be more generous than this, my mother said, disappointment evident in her voice. Family supports family, Jeanette. Your brother is going through a difficult time, and I'm supporting him by providing housing. But that doesn't mean surrendering everything I own to the whims of his family. The conversation ended with my mother clearly dissatisfied with my selfishness and me feeling increasingly like I was losing control of my own life. Over the following weeks, the situation deteriorated further. My grocery bills doubled, then tripled, as Travis and Ashley made no effort to contribute financially. The utilities skyrocketed, with 4 additional people taking long showers, running the dishwasher daily, and keeping lights and electronics on constantly. I began hiding my remaining art supplies in my car trunk, along with important documents and cherished possessions I couldn't risk being damaged. My bedroom became my only refuge, though even that sanctuary was regularly invaded by Lucy and Liam barging in without knocking. My work began to suffer. I arrived at school exhausted from nights of disrupted sleep, as the children's bedtime routines frequently extended past 11 with crying, stomping, and door slamming that made rest impossible. My principal, Margaret, noticed my decline in energy and focus, gently suggesting during a check-in that I seemed distracted and tired lately. "Is everything all right at home, Jeanette?" she asked with genuine concern. I considered confiding in her, but settled for a vague explanation about family staying with me temporarily, causing some disruption. Margaret reminded me that parent-teacher conferences were approaching, and I needed to be at my best. That weekend, I met my friend Rachel for coffee, desperate for some perspective from someone outside the situation. "You need to move out," she said bluntly after hearing my story. "They're taking advantage of you, and your parents are enabling it." "But it's my apartment," I protested. "I've lived there for 6 years. Why should I be the one to leave?" "Technically, it's your parents' apartment," Rachel pointed out, "and they've clearly chosen sides. You're fighting a losing battle trying to maintain boundaries with Travis and Ashley when your parents undermine you at every turn. But moving is expensive. I'd need first and last month's rent security deposit." "What's the cost to your mental health staying there?" she countered. "Besides, you've been paying rent anyway. Redirect that money to a place that's truly yours where you make the rules." Her advice made sense, but family loyalty and the inertia of 6 years in one place held me back from acting immediately. Then came the dinner that changed everything. My parents invited themselves over on a Friday evening, bringing takeout from my favorite Italian restaurant, a peace offering, I assumed. We sat around my small dining table, the children mercifully occupied with a movie in the living room. "Travis has some good news," my father announced, beaming with pride. "Tell your sister, son." Travis straightened up importantly. "I had an interview yesterday for an assistant manager position at Sports Zone. It went really well. I think they're going to make an offer next week." "That's great," I said, genuinely pleased. "So you'll be able to get your own place soon." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My parents exchanged glances. Well, my mother began carefully. "We thought that since the arrangement is working out so well, Travis and his family might stay here longer term. It makes sense financially for everyone." "Working out well?" I echoed incredulously. "Based on what evidence? You have this nice big apartment all to yourself normally," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "It seems wasteful when Travis and Ashley need the space for their family." "I have this apartment because I pay for it," I reminded her. "I've been paying rent faithfully for 6 years. "Yes, about that," my mother set down her fork. "With the increased utilities and wear and tear on the apartment with 5 people living here now, we think it's only fair that your rent should increase. We're thinking double the current amount would be reasonable." The shock rendered me momentarily speechless. I looked from my mother to my father, waiting for some indication that this was a poor attempt at humor. Their expressions remained earnest and expectant. "Let me get this straight," I finally managed. "You want me to pay double rent while Travis continues to live here for free. In what universe is that fair?" "Travis has children to support, my father," explained patiently as if to a slow student. "Once he starts this new job, he'll need to save for their future. You're single with a stable income. You can afford to help your brother get back on his feet properly. By subsidizing his housing indefinitely, that's not helping him get on his feet. That's enabling him to continue avoiding responsibility." "Family helps family," my mother repeated her mantra. "You've always been the responsible one, Jeanette. Travis needs more support than you do." The familiar refrain hit differently this time. I had always been the responsible one, and my reward was to bear even more responsibility while Travis continued to skate by on charm and excuses. I looked at my brother, expecting at least a hint of embarrassment or gratitude. Instead, I caught the edge of a smug smile quickly hidden behind his napkin. In that moment, I realized this had been the plan all along. Not a temporary emergency measure, but a permanent arrangement where I would effectively support my brother's family while being relegated to the status of unwelcome roommate in my own home. The clarity of that realization was both painful and liberating. As my parents continued outlining their expectations for this new arrangement, I made a decision that would change everything. "This is absolutely insane," I said, pushing back from the table. "I've been patient. I've been accommodating. But I will not pay double rent to subsidize Travis living here rent-free." Now, Jeanette, my father, adopted his reasonable tone. "Let's discuss this calmly." "I am calm," I replied. "I'm just no longer willing to be taken advantage of." "No one is taking advantage," my mother insisted. "We're asking you to help your brother." I have been helping him. I gave up my privacy, my space, and my peace of mind. I've watched my bills triple and my property be damaged. And now you want me to essentially pay his rent, too. Where does it end? "It ends when Travis is financially secure," my father said firmly. "Family comes first, Jeanette. Always." Funny how that principle only seems to apply when I'm the one making sacrifices, I observed. Has Travis ever been asked to put family first when it inconveniences him? "That's different," my mother waved dismissively. "Travis has different challenges." "Yes, challenges largely of his own making. Meanwhile, I'm being punished for having my life together." "No one is punishing you." My mother's voice took on the martyred tone she used when she felt unappreciated. "We're simply asking you to help your brother during a difficult time." By paying double rent indefinitely, I shook my head in disbelief. "That's not helping. That's exploitation." "I think you're being very selfish," Ashley interjected, apparently having eavesdropped from the living room. "We have children to consider." "Children you chose to have despite Travis's unstable employment history," I pointed out. "That's not my responsibility." "So you'd see your niece and nephew homeless?" my mother asked, eyes widening in manufactured shock. "They wouldn't be homeless if Travis and Ashley acted like responsible adults," I countered. "Or if you two offered them one of your other rental properties instead of expecting me to accommodate them in mine." "Those properties have paying tenants," my father explained as if to a child. "We can't just evict people." "But you can effectively evict me by making my own home unlivable and financially untenable." The hypocrisy was staggering. Travis, who had remained suspiciously quiet during this exchange, finally spoke up. "Look, sis, I know it's not ideal, but I'm really trying here. This job will be a fresh start for us." I turned to him, really looking at his expression. Behind the practiced sincerity in his eyes, I caught a glimmer of something else. Satisfaction. He was enjoying this, watching me squirm while he secured a comfortable arrangement for his family at my expense. "When does this job start, Travis?" I asked pointedly. "Well, I don't actually have the offer yet, but—" "So this entire conversation is based on a job you don't even have," I laughed humorlessly. "And even if you get it, how long before you decide the manager is out to get you or the hours are too demanding with the kids and you quit?" "That's unfair," he protested, but the flush creeping up his neck told me I'd hit the mark. "No, what's unfair is this entire situation." I stood up, suddenly needing space. "I need some air. We'll continue this discussion later." I grabbed my jacket and keys, ignoring my mother's protests as I headed for the door. Once in my car, I simply drove, no destination in mind, just needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere of manipulation and entitlement. 2 hours later, I found myself at Sarah's apartment. Sarah had been my friend since college, and unlike my family, she had always been straightforward and honest with me. She worked in real estate and had a knack for cutting through emotional clutter to practical solutions. "They want you to pay double rent while your brother lives there for free," she repeated incredulously after I'd explained the situation. "That's beyond absurd." "Tell me about it," I sighed, cradling the mug of tea she'd handed me. "I don't know what to do, Sarah. It's my home, but they own it. They're my family, but they're treating me like an ATM." "You know what you need to do," she replied, fixing me with her no-nonsense stare. "You need to get out of there. And go where finding an apartment in this market isn't easy, especially on a teacher's salary." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said, "Actually, there's a 1-bedroom opening up in my building next month. The current tenant is moving out of state for a job. It's smaller than your current place, but it's well-maintained, and the landlord is reliable." "I don't know if I can afford to move right now," I admitted. First and last month's rent, security deposit, moving costs. Your parents have been charging you below market rent, Sarah pointed out. The place in my building would be about what you're currently paying, maybe a bit more. And think about what you'd be gaining. Peace, privacy, and freedom from being manipulated. The idea was tempting, but guilt and family obligation held me back. They're still my family, Sarah. Walking away feels like admitting defeat. This isn't about winning or losing, she countered. It's about recognizing a toxic situation and having the self-respect to remove yourself from it. You can still love your family without allowing them to take advantage of you. I spent a restless night on Sarah's couch, weighing my options and examining my relationship with my family from angles I'd previously avoided. By morning, I had reached a tentative decision. Can I see the apartment in your building? I asked Sarah over breakfast. She grinned. I already texted the landlord. We can view it this afternoon. The apartment was indeed smaller than my current place, just under 700 square feet, but it was bright, clean, and most importantly would be mine alone. The rent was slightly higher than I currently paid, but still manageable on my salary, especially without the burden of supporting 4 additional people. I'll need to think about it, I told the landlord, though in my heart I had already decided. When I returned to my apartment that evening, I found Travis and Ashley having what appeared to be a celebration dinner with my parents. A bottle of champagne sat open on the table. There she is, Travis called cheerfully. The woman of the hour. What's going on? I asked cautiously. Travis got the job, my mother announced proudly. They called this afternoon with an offer. He starts next Monday. That's great news, I said sincerely. Congratulations, Travis. We were just discussing the new arrangements, my father explained. Now that Travis has steady employment, we thought it would make sense for your parents to transfer ownership of this apartment to Travis and Ashley eventually. They need the stability for the children. The casual way he referred to himself in the third person couldn't disguise the bombshell he'd just dropped. They weren't just expecting me to subsidize Travis living here. They were planning to give him my home entirely. Transfer ownership, I repeated slowly. Of my apartment, the one I've been living in for 6 years? Well, technically our apartment, my mother corrected. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Travis has a family. You're just one person. You could easily find a smaller place. The audacity was breathtaking. I looked around at their expectant faces, my parents beaming with pride at their solution, Travis trying to suppress a triumphant smile, Ashley already mentally redecorating my space. I see was all I could manage without exploding. And when exactly were you planning to inform me of this decision about my living situation? We're telling you now, dear, my mother replied, missing or ignoring the ice in my tone. We thought you'd be happy to help Travis secure a stable home for his family. By giving up my own, I clarified. You can find another apartment, my father waved dismissively. You don't have children to consider. In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside me. The last threads of guilt and obligation snapped, replaced by a cold clarity. These people, my family, had no regard for my needs or feelings. I was simply a resource to be exploited for Travis's benefit. I need some time to process this, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. It's been a long day. I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. As I sat on my bed, I heard their celebration continue without pause. They hadn't even noticed or cared about my distress. Taking out my phone, I texted Sarah, I'll take the apartment. When can I sign the lease? Her reply came immediately. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. You're making the right decision. I spent that night researching tenant rights in our state and making notes about the condition of the apartment and the improvements I'd made over the years. If my parents wanted to evict me in favor of Travis, they would need to do it legally, and I would ensure I was protected. The following morning, I met Sarah and her building's landlord signing a lease that would begin in 2 weeks. The security deposit took a significant bite from my savings, but as I signed the paperwork, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. That evening, I stayed late at school, using the quiet to grade papers and gather my thoughts. When I returned to the apartment, I overheard Travis and Ashley talking in the kitchen, unaware of my presence in the hallway. Your parents practically promised us we'd get the apartment once you start your new job, Ashley was saying. Jeanette's been paying enough that they've almost got the mortgage covered. A few more months of her paying double, and we could own this place free and clear. Mom says they might transfer the title to us as an early inheritance. Travis replied, his voice smug. Just gotta play along a little longer. Jeanette's always been a pushover when it comes to family guilt trips. I was worried when she got upset yesterday, Ashley admitted. But your mom knows exactly how to handle her. That whole family comes first thing works every time. Trust me, Travis laughed. My sister's too responsible to bail. She'll complain, but she'll pay the increased rent because she doesn't want to disappoint mom and dad. She's predictable that way. Their casual discussion of manipulating me was the final confirmation I needed. This wasn't a temporary hardship or a family pulling together in crisis. This was a calculated plan to take advantage of my sense of obligation and financial stability. As I quietly retreated from the doorway, a new determination settled over me. They thought they knew me, thought I was predictable and easily manipulated. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The next morning, I called in sick to school for the first time in 3 years. Once Travis had left for his first day at the new job, and Ashley had taken the children to the park, I sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop and began methodically planning my exit. First, I created a comprehensive inventory of all my belongings in the apartment, categorizing them by room and priority. Essential documents, irreplaceable items, and professional materials would move first. Furniture and less crucial items would follow. Large pieces I could leave behind without regret. The bedroom set had been purchased when I moved in and could stay. Next, I photographed every room in its current state, documenting both the general condition and any specific damage caused by Travis's family. The crayon marks on the wall behind the sofa, the stain on the carpet from spilled juice, the scratch on the bathroom door from one of the children's toys, all carefully cataloged with timestamps. I called Mark, a friend from college who now practiced family law, and arranged to meet for lunch the following day. I needed to understand exactly what my rights and obligations were as a tenant in a property owned by my parents. Over sandwiches at a cafe near his office, Mark listened carefully to my situation. Based on what you've told me, you've been a tenant with a verbal month-to-month agreement, he explained. That means you're entitled to proper notice if they want to terminate your tenancy, usually 30 days in this state. What about all the improvements I've made to the apartment over the years, I asked. The painting, new light fixtures, bathroom, vanity. Did you have any agreement that those would be compensated or deducted from rent? Nothing in writing, I admitted. It was always just understood that I was taking care of the place. Mark nodded thoughtfully. Without documentation, those would generally be considered gifts to the property. However, you could potentially argue for some compensation if you have receipts and can prove they approved the improvements. And if I decide to move out, you'd also need to provide 30 days' notice, he advised. Make sure to document the condition thoroughly when you leave to protect your security deposit, though that might be complicated with other people still living there. What if I just paid through the end of next month and left early? Legally, you'd have fulfilled your obligation. Just make sure to formally notify them in writing that you're terminating your tenancy effective at the end of the paid period. I left our meeting with a clear understanding of my rights and a growing sense of resolve. That afternoon, I opened a new bank account at a different bank from the one my parents used. I transferred enough funds to cover my new security deposit, moving expenses, and 2 months' rent at the new place. Next, I created a detailed timeline for my move. With my new lease beginning in 2 weeks, I would need to work efficiently without raising suspicions. I decided to move my most valuable and personal items, first gradually transferring them to the new apartment when no one was around. That evening, I called my friend Rachel, who had a truck and had offered to help with the move. I need this to be under the radar, I explained. Can you help me move boxes a few at a time over the next 2 weeks? Absolutely, she agreed without hesitation. Your family has taken advantage of you for too long. I'm happy to be part of your jailbreak. Over the next 10 days, I executed my plan with careful precision. Each morning after Travis left for work and Ashley took the kids out, I would move a few carefully packed boxes to my car, transfer them to my new apartment during my lunch break or after school, and return as if nothing had changed. My essential documents went first: birth certificate, passport, financial records, teaching credentials. Then my art supplies and books, the items I most feared would be damaged by careless handling. Clothing followed, starting with out-of-season items less likely to be noticed missing. I maintained my normal routine, otherwise saying nothing about my plans to Travis, Ashley, or my parents. When my mother called to ask about the increased rent payment for the upcoming month, I assured her I would take care of it, a carefully worded non-promise that seemed to satisfy her. Meanwhile, I prepared my new apartment, setting up essential furniture purchased secondhand from local online listings. Sarah helped me find an affordable bed frame, a small dining table, and a comfortable used couch. The space took shape, gradually becoming mine, in a way my parents' property had never truly been. One evening during this process, I received a call from a family friend, Charlotte, who had known me since childhood. "Jeanette, I hope I'm not overstepping," she began awkwardly, "but I thought you should know something. I was having coffee with your mother yesterday, and she mentioned they've updated their will." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "She said they're leaving the apartment to Travis and Ashley. She seemed to assume you already knew, but something about the way she said it made me wonder if you did." The confirmation of what I'd already suspected still stung. "Thanks for telling me, Charlotte. It's good to know where I stand." "I'm sorry, Jeanette. I've always thought your parents expected too much from you while letting Travis off the hook. It doesn't seem fair." "It's not," I agreed. "But I'm working on a solution." 2 days before my planned final move, I came home from school to find Ashley in tears at the kitchen table, Travis pacing angrily nearby, and my parents sitting with expressions of grave concern. "What's going on?" I asked, setting down my bag. "Travis has been let go," my mother explained, her tone suggesting a terrible injustice had occurred. "Let go? You just started the job last week," I turned to Travis in confusion. "The manager had it in for me from day one," he insisted, face flushed with indignation. "Made impossible demands, criticized everything I did. I stood up for myself and he fired me on the spot." "Travis was defending his dignity," my father added supportively. I'd heard this story too many times before. The unreasonable boss, the unfair expectations, Travis as the victim of circumstances, rather than the architect of his own failures. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said neutrally. "What's the plan now?" My parents exchanged glances before my mother spoke. "Well, with this setback, we think it's even more important that we all pull together as a family." "Meaning?" "We still need to increase your rent," as discussed, she continued smoothly. "And given the circumstances, we were hoping you might also help with groceries for everyone. Travis needs to focus on finding the right position, not just any job, and that takes time." "You want me to pay double rent and buy groceries for a family of 4, I clarified, amazed at their audacity. "You have a stable job," my father pointed out, as if my employment was some unearned advantage, rather than the result of hard work and commitment. "We're not asking forever," my mother added. "Just until Travis finds a suitable position." Looking at their expectant faces, I realized they genuinely saw nothing wrong with their request. In their minds, my purpose was to support Travis and his family regardless of the cost to me. I was a resource, not a person with needs and dreams of my own. "I'll think about it," I said, the lie tasting bitter but necessary. That night, I finalized my exit strategy. Rachel would come with her truck early Saturday morning when Travis and his family typically slept late. We would load the remaining items I planned to take. I would leave my keys and a letter explaining my departure, and by afternoon I would be completely moved into my new apartment. Friday evening I paid my normal rent amount, not the doubled fee my parents expected, directly to my father's account as I always had. It would cover the next 30 days, fulfilling my legal obligation while giving me a clean break. I prepared a detailed letter outlining the condition of the apartment when I'd moved in 6 years earlier, the improvements I'd made at my own expense, and the current condition, including damages caused by Travis's family. I attached receipts for major purchases and improvements, along with before and after photos where I had them. The letter concluded, "I have fulfilled all my obligations as a tenant, including providing this written notice that I am terminating my tenancy effective 30 days from today's date. The rent I've just paid covers this period in full. I wish you all the best and hope Travis and his family enjoy their new home." As I sealed the envelope, I felt a complex mix of emotions: sadness at the breakdown of family relationships, anger at the years of unequal treatment, but predominantly a powerful sense of liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I was prioritizing my own well-being over the endless demands of my family. The stage was set. Tomorrow would bring the final act in this family drama, and for once I would be writing the script. Saturday morning arrived with a gentle rain that seemed fitting for the day's significance. I had barely slept, a combination of anticipation and lingering doubt keeping me restless. By 6:30 I was up and double-checking my preparations when my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "On my way. Operation Freedom commences in 30. Travis, Ashley, and the children were still asleep, having stayed up late watching movies. Their weekend routine typically had them emerging around 10, which gave me a crucial window of opportunity. Rachel arrived at 7 sharp, parking her truck a block away to avoid alerting anyone. We worked with quiet efficiency, moving the last of my belongings, mostly clothing and kitchen items I'd specifically purchased myself. I had decided to leave the furniture, appliances, and anything that could be considered part of the apartment. This wasn't about taking everything I could. It was about reclaiming my independence with dignity. "Are you sure about the bedroom set?" Rachel whispered as we carried out the last box. "You paid for it." "Let them have it," I replied. "I want a clean break, not an itemized battle." By 8:15, the truck was loaded. I did a final walkthrough of what had been my home for 6 years. My bedroom was now empty of personal belongings, but still furnished with the bed dresser and nightstands. The bathroom contained only the items I'd decided to leave behind: generic towels, shower curtain, basic toiletries, easily replaced. In the kitchen, I'd left all major appliances and basic cookware, but taken my specialty items: the expensive knife set I'd received as a Christmas gift from colleagues, my professional-grade stand mixer, the handmade pottery, mugs from a local artist. On the kitchen counter, I placed the envelope containing my letter alongside my set of keys. After a moment's thought, I added a note: "I've moved to my own place. All rent is paid through next month. Good luck." With one last look around, I walked out the door, closing this chapter of my life with a soft click of the latch. Sarah met us at the new apartment, helping to unload the truck and organize the boxes. By noon, the bulk of the moving was complete, and I sent Rachel and Sarah out for lunch with my heartfelt thanks and a promise to host them for dinner once I was settled. Alone in my new space, I took a deep breath, feeling a curious lightness despite the physical exhaustion. The apartment was smaller, simpler, but wholly mine. No one could demand I change my routines, give up my space, or subsidize others' poor choices here. The freedom was both exhilarating and a little scary. At 2:17, exactly as I'd predicted, my phone exploded with notifications. Travis had apparently awakened to find my bedroom empty and my note on the counter. The first text was from him. "What the hell, Jeanette? Where are you? Where's your stuff?" This was quickly followed by a call from my mother, which I let go to voicemail. Her message was a mixture of confusion and indignation. "Jeanette, call me immediately. Travis says you've moved out. Without discussing it with any of us, this is completely irresponsible and inconsiderate. Call me back right now." I texted Travis briefly. As the note says, "I've moved to my own place. All rent is paid through next month." To my mother's voicemail, I sent a simple text. "I'll call you tomorrow when things have calmed down. Yes, I've moved to my own apartment. Everything is explained in the letter I left." Over the next 4 hours, the messages escalated in both frequency and tone. My father called 7 times, leaving increasingly stern voicemails demanding I stop this nonsense and come home to discuss this like adults. My mother alternated between expressions of hurt. "How could you do this to your family?" and anger after everything we've done for you. Travis's messages devolved from confusion to accusations. "You've really screwed us over. You know that Mom and Dad expected that double rent. Now what are we supposed to do?" Ashley, who had never texted me before, sent a particularly vitriolic message. "Real mature, running away instead of helping family. The kids are upset their aunt just disappeared. Hope you're proud of yourself for hurting children." I muted my phone notifications, needing space to continue organizing my new home without the constant barrage of guilt and manipulation. By evening, I had my bedroom and bathroom functional, the kitchen basics unpacked, and enough order to make the space livable if not yet fully settled. Sunday morning, I awoke to the unfamiliar quietness of my new apartment. No children jumping and running overhead, no television blaring cartoons, no Ashley's complaints about the water pressure or coffee strength. Just peaceful silence and the gentle morning light filtering through curtains I had chosen. After a leisurely coffee on my small balcony, I checked my phone. 23 missed calls and 37 text messages awaited. Steeling myself, I called my mother as promised. She answered on the first ring. "Finally, where are you? What is the meaning of this disappearing act?" "Hello to you too, Mom," I replied calmly. "I'm in my new apartment. As I explained in my letter, I've terminated my tenancy with 30 days' notice and paid rent covering that period. You can't just leave without discussing it with us first. We're family." That's exactly why I didn't discuss it first. Every family conversation lately has ended with my needs and feelings being dismissed. This wasn't a spontaneous decision, it was the result of months of being taken advantage of. Taken advantage of, she sputtered. We offered you reduced rent for years. And I was a perfect tenant for years, I countered. But when you demanded I pay double to subsidize Travis living there for free while planning to eventually give him the apartment, the arrangement stopped being beneficial to me. How did you... She stopped abruptly, clearly surprised I knew about their inheritance plans. It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that you and Dad have consistently prioritized Travis's needs over mine, expected me to make sacrifices he never has to make, and treated me like a resource rather than a daughter. That's simply not true, she insisted. We love you both equally. Your actions say otherwise, I replied. But that's not actually the point anymore. The point is that I've made a decision that's best for me, and I've done it legally and responsibly. The rent is paid. You can let Travis live there for free now without trying to make me fund it. The conversation continued in circles, my mother oscillating between guilt trips demands and attempts to make me question my decision. When she realized I wasn't going to budge, her tone changed. Your father wants to speak with you, she said coldly, and I heard the phone changing hands. Jeanette. My father's voice was controlled but tight with anger. This behavior is completely unacceptable. You've left your brother and his family in a terrible position. How exactly have I done that, Dad? They still have housing. The rent is paid for the next month. The only thing that's changed is that I'm no longer there to be taken advantage of. We expected that increased rent payment, he said, ignoring my point. Our budget for the property was based on that commitment. I never committed to paying double rent, I reminded him. In fact, I explicitly said it was unfair and unreasonable. You chose to ignore that and proceed as if I'd agreed anyway. Family obligations don't require formal agreements, he insisted. Maybe they should, I countered. Maybe if we'd had clear, fair expectations from the beginning, we wouldn't be in this situation. The conversation deteriorated from there, with my father eventually delivering an ultimatum. Either I return to the apartment and pay the increased rent, or I would be causing a permanent rift in the family. I'm not causing the rift, Dad, I said sadly. I'm just refusing to continue an unfair arrangement. The choice to make this a bigger issue is yours. After hanging up, I took a moment to steady myself. Standing up to my parents had been even more difficult than I'd anticipated, but also more liberating. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had prioritized my own well-being, without allowing guilt to override my decision. Monday morning brought an unwelcome surprise. As I was preparing my classroom before students arrived, the school secretary appeared at my door. Jeanette, there are people in the front office insisting on seeing you. They say they're your parents. My heart sank. Did they say what it's about? Something about a family emergency, she replied, looking concerned. Should I tell them you're in class preparation and can't be disturbed? I considered my options quickly. Refusing to see them would only escalate the situation and potentially create more drama at my workplace. No, I'll come speak with them. Could you ask Margaret to join us, please? Having my principal present would hopefully keep the conversation civil. In the conference room, adjacent to the front office, I found my parents sitting stiffly expressions, set in matching masks of disapproval. Margaret, sensing tension, had positioned herself strategically between us. Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, as I explained, we don't typically interrupt teachers during school hours, she began professionally. If this is indeed a family emergency. Our daughter has abandoned her brother and his children, my mother declared dramatically. They could be homeless because of her selfish actions. I took a deep breath. That's not accurate, Mom. As I explained yesterday, I've paid rent through the next month. Travis and his family have housing. I've simply moved to my own apartment. Without warning, my father added accusingly. After months of having my boundaries ignored and my space invaded, I corrected. After being told I would need to pay double rent while Travis lived there for free. After discovering you plan to eventually give him the apartment despite my years of reliable tenancy. Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly, but she maintained her professional demeanor. I understand this is a difficult family situation, but Jeanette has students arriving in 20 minutes. Perhaps this conversation could continue after school hours. We need to resolve this now, my father insisted. Jeanette needs to return home and fulfill her obligations to her family. I have fulfilled my obligations. I stated firmly. Legally and ethically. What you're asking goes beyond obligation into exploitation. How dare you, my mother's voice rose. After everything we've done for you. Mr. and Mrs. Lawson Margaret intervened her tone, brooking no argument. I must ask you to lower your voices. This is a school environment. Whatever personal disagreements you have with your daughter must be resolved elsewhere. This isn't just personal, my father argued. It's a matter of family responsibility. It's also a matter of professional boundaries, Margaret replied coolly. Jeanette is a valued member of our teaching staff, and I cannot allow disruptions that impact her ability to perform her duties. If you cannot conduct this conversation calmly and appropriately, I must ask you to leave. My parents looked taken aback. Clearly they had expected Margaret to be a neutral party at worst, or an ally who would help pressure me at best. Instead, they found themselves being firmly but politely escorted from the premises, with assurances that I would be available to speak with them after school hours if I chose to do so. Once they had departed, Margaret turned to me with concern. Are you all right, Jeanette? That seemed quite intense. Briefly, I explained the situation. The months of boundary violations, the unfair financial demands, the discovery of their plans to eventually transfer ownership to my brother. I'm sorry you're going through this, she said sincerely. Family conflicts are among the most painful. Do you need to take a personal day? No, I assured her. Actually, being here with my students will probably be the most normal part of my day. Thank you for your support. Of course, she replied with a warm smile. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the hardest lesson to learn, but also the most important one to teach, even if we don't explicitly include it in the curriculum. The rest of the day passed in a blur of teaching and avoiding checking my phone. When I finally returned to my new apartment that evening, I had multiple voicemails from Travis, each more desperate than the last. The final one, left just an hour earlier, revealed the true impact of my departure. Jeanette, you have to help us out here. Mom and Dad are saying we need to start paying rent next month since you're not covering the increased amount. We can't afford that right now. You know my job situation is complicated. Call me back, we need to figure something out. In that moment, I understood that my actions had forced a reckoning that was long overdue. Travis was finally facing the reality that his choices had consequences. Consequences that had been shielded from him by our parents' favoritism and my reluctant subsidizing. For the first time in years, I felt not just free but vindicated. The painful break had been necessary, and though reconciliation might be possible someday, it would have to be on entirely new terms. Terms that included respect, fairness, and acknowledgement of my worth beyond what I could provide for others. The first week in my new apartment passed in a blur of adjustment and discovery. Though the space was smaller, it felt infinitely more spacious, without 4 additional people and their possessions crowding every corner. I could leave my art supplies out on the small dining table without fear of damage. I could shower without finding the hot water depleted. I could sleep without being awakened by midnight tantrums or early morning cartoons at full volume. The financial adjustment was challenging but manageable. My rent was slightly higher than before, and I needed to budget more carefully for groceries and utilities. Yet even with these increased expenses, I found myself less financially strained than when I was subsidizing Travis's family's needs. The psychological relief of controlling my own resources far outweighed the budgetary adjustments required. The barrage of communication from my family continued unabated through that first week. My mother alternated between angry accusations and tearful pleas. My father sent formal-sounding texts outlining my obligations and the consequences of my actions. Travis vacillated between blaming me for his predicament and attempting to convince me to just cover 1 more month while he figured things out. On Friday evening, I received a particularly concerning message from my mother. Your father and I have consulted our attorney. If you don't fulfill your commitment to the increased rent, we'll have no choice but to report your delinquency to credit bureaus. Think carefully about damaging your financial reputation over family disagreements. The threat was both hurtful and worrying. Though I was confident in my legal standing, the prospect of a financial dispute with my own parents was distressing. The following morning, I called Mark, my attorney friend, to discuss the situation. They're bluffing, he assured me after hearing the details. You've paid the agreed-upon rent through the proper notice period. There's no delinquency to report. If they tried, you could dispute it easily, and potentially even have grounds for a harassment claim. They're also claiming I owe them for utilities from the past 3 months, I added, recalling my father's latest message. Do you have records of your payments? Yes, I've kept all receipts and bank statements showing transfers to their account with memo lines specifying what each payment covered. Then you're well protected, Mark confirmed. Would you like me to draft a formal letter outlining your legal position? Sometimes having an attorney involved helps people recognize when they're overreaching. I considered his offer. Not yet. I'd rather try to resolve this without escalating to legal threats if possible. These are still my parents despite everything. I understand, he said gently, but keep documenting everything just in case. The following week brought an unexpected development. My colleague Dana mentioned seeing Travis at a local cafe filling out job applications. Isn't that your brother? She asked, showing me a photo she'd snapped of the cafe's new spring decorations with Travis visible in the background, papers spread across a table. Yes, that's him, I confirmed, surprised. He told me he was focused on finding management positions through his professional network. Dana shrugged. Well, he was definitely filling out applications for the coffee corner and that new sandwich place next door. I recognized the forms. The knowledge that Travis was finally taking practical steps toward employment rather than holding out for an ideal position gave me a glimmer of hope that perhaps my departure had catalyzed positive change, however reluctantly. Embraced. 3 weeks after moving out, I received a text from Ashley that further confirmed this shift. Just so you know, Travis started working at the coffee corner yesterday. Not his dream job, but it's something. Your parents are making us pay half the rent now. Thanks for nothing. Despite her bitter tone, I saw this as progress. Travis was working, contributing to housing costs, and experiencing the reality most adults had faced all along. That survival sometimes requires taking available jobs rather than waiting for perfect ones. A month into my new living arrangement, I felt settled enough to invite Sarah and Rachel over for dinner to thank them properly for their help with the move. As we enjoyed a simple meal on my small balcony watching the sunset over the city park across the street, Sarah raised her glass in a toast. To Jeanette, who finally learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. And to New Beginnings, Rachel added with a smile. Their support had been invaluable throughout this challenging transition, reminding me that family could be chosen as well as born and healthy relationships required mutual respect and reciprocity. The following Saturday, I was surprised by a knock at my door. I hadn't given my new address to any family members, preferring to maintain the separation while emotions were still raw. Through the peephole, I saw Travis shifting awkwardly from foot to foot in the hallway. Cautiously, I opened the door. How did you find my address? He had the grace to look embarrassed. Sarah mentioned you lived in her building now. The property manager recognized my last name and pointed me to your apartment. I hope that's okay. That depends on why you're here, I replied, not inviting him in yet. Can we talk just for a few minutes? I hesitated, then stepped back, allowing him entry. Come in. But I don't have long. Travis entered, glancing around the apartment with obvious curiosity. Nice place. Smaller than the other one, though. It's just me here, so it's actually spacious, I pointed out. What did you want to talk about? He sank onto my sofa, running a hand through his hair, a gesture from childhood that always indicated he was struggling with something difficult. I owe you an apology, he said, finally. A big one. Of all the things I had expected, this wasn't on the list. You do. Yeah. When you moved out, I was angry. Felt like you'd abandoned us, left us hanging. But these past weeks, he paused, gathering his thoughts. I've realized some things. I sat in the armchair across from him, waiting. I've been living in a fantasy world, he continued. Always expecting someone else to bail me out. Mom and Dad, you, whoever. Always thinking I deserved better than entry-level jobs or budget apartments. Always blaming bad luck or other people for my situations. What changed? I asked, genuinely curious. Reality hit hard, he admitted. When you left and Mom and Dad said we needed to pay rent, I suddenly understood what you'd been dealing with all along. Working full-time, paying bills, being responsible. It's exhausting. Welcome to adulthood, I said, not unkindly. I'm starting to get that now. He looked around the apartment again. You've made this place nice. With your own money, your own work. I never really appreciated what that meant before. And now, Now I'm working at a coffee shop looking for a second part-time job, and Ashley's interviewing for receptionist positions. We're actually creating a budget for the first time ever." He gave a short, self-deprecating laugh. Turns out money doesn't magically appear in bank accounts. Who knew? Despite everything, I found myself smiling at his attempt at humor. "So you're managing in the apartment, for now. Mom and Dad are letting us pay reduced rent, but it's still a stretch. They're talking about selling the place next year if the market's good." "I'm sorry it's been hard," I said, surprising myself with the sincerity of the sentiment. "I didn't move out to punish you, Travis. I moved because the situation was untenable for me." "I get that now," he nodded. "We were taking you for granted. All of us, not just Mom and Dad. I was smug about it even. That was wrong." The simple acknowledgement was more meaningful than I had expected. For years I had been made to feel unreasonable for wanting basic respect and fairness. "Thank you for saying that," I replied quietly. "Ashley and I have been talking a lot," he continued, "about responsibility, finances, parenting. We've been pretty bad at all three, honestly, but we're trying to do better now." "I'm glad to hear that." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I don't expect us to be best friends overnight or anything. I know I've been a lousy brother for years, but I'd like a chance to change that eventually." "I'd like that too," I admitted, "but it will take time and things need to be different." "I know." He stood, preparing to leave. "For what it's worth, I admire what you did. It took courage to walk away from a situation everyone else was telling you to accept. I couldn't have done it." After Travis left, I sat reflecting on our conversation. His visit had been unexpected, but healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. The acknowledgement of wrongdoing, the steps toward responsibility, the genuine effort to make amends, these were positive signs that perhaps our family relationships could eventually be rebuilt on healthier foundations. 2 weeks later, I received an email from my father with an attached spreadsheet detailing all the improvements I had made to the apartment over the years, along with their estimated values. The accompanying message was brief but significant. "After reviewing our records and consulting with a property appraiser, we've determined that the attached improvements you made to the property have increased its value substantially. We've deposited the equivalent amount in your account as compensation. This seems only fair." The transfer that followed was substantial, nearly enough to cover 6 months of rent in my new place. The financial gesture was appreciated, but the acknowledgement of fairness meant far more. My mother proved more resistant to change. Her messages continued to include subtle guilt trips and reminders of family obligation, though the overt hostility had faded. When I finally agreed to meet her for coffee after 2 months of distance, her first words were telling, "You look well. I suppose living alone agrees with you." "It does," I confirmed. "Having my own space and making my own decisions has been good for me. Your father says we may have been somewhat unreasonable in our expectations," she admitted reluctantly. "Though I still think family should come first." "Family should matter," I agreed, "but not at the expense of being taken advantage of. There's a difference between supporting each other and enabling unhealthy patterns." She sighed, stirring her coffee absently. "Travis is working 2 jobs now. Ashley's found part-time work at a doctor's office. The children are in after-school programs. That sounds like positive progress." "It's been an adjustment for everyone," she acknowledged. "Perhaps we did make things too easy for them in the past." Coming from my mother, this was tantamount to a full confession of error. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly. "We all did what we thought was right at the time I offered, but now we have a chance to build something healthier." 6 months after my abrupt departure from the family apartment, I hosted a dinner at my place. Travis and Ashley came without the children, who were having a sleepover with my parents. The atmosphere was slightly awkward but cordial, a family feeling its way toward a new normal. "Your art is really good," Ashley commented, examining a watercolor landscape I'd recently completed. "I never really looked at it before. I'm sorry about letting Lucy use your expensive supplies." Water under the bridge, I assured her, appreciating the belated acknowledgement. Travis shared news of a promotion to shift supervisor at the coffee shop, while Ashley talked about enrolling in an online course for medical office management. My parents, who had declined my invitation citing prior commitments, were reportedly considering downsizing their own home now that retirement was approaching. As we shared a simple meal around my small table, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The painful break had been necessary, a catalyst for change that mere conversations could never have accomplished. By removing myself from a situation that diminished my worth, I had not only reclaimed my own dignity, but inadvertently forced everyone else to confront patterns that weren't serving them either. The relationships were different now, more cautious, less presumptive, but also more honest. There was accountability where before there had been entitlement, respect where there had been dismissal. We were slowly building connections based on mutual value rather than obligation or guilt. Later that evening, after everyone had left, I stood on my small balcony watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The apartment below mine was playing music softly, and somewhere nearby someone was grilling dinner, the savory scent wafting up on the evening breeze. This building, these neighbors, this space, all chosen by me for me. The greatest lesson I had learned wasn't about family dynamics or financial independence, though those were significant. The most profound realization was about self-worth, that caring for others should never require diminishing yourself, that saying no to exploitation isn't selfish but necessary, and that sometimes the bravest act of love is walking away from those who cannot see your value. In standing up for myself, I had ultimately helped everyone. Travis and Ashley were developing responsibility and work ethic. My parents were reassessing their enabling patterns, and I had found a peace and confidence I hadn't known was possible. Family would always matter to me, but now it would be on terms of mutual respect rather than martyrdom. And in that space of authentic connection rather than obligation, perhaps we would all finally thrive. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to prioritize your own well-being when others were taking advantage of your generosity? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement to set healthy boundaries. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope you find the courage to value yourself as much as you value others.